The world seems to disappear when your children scream in pain. I will never forget that moment. My two boys, blinded by the fury of the Arctic during our first hunt together. The panic in their voices as their eyes burned with snow blindness. I built our igloo with trembling hands, knowing we were trapped for days while the infection spread. The wisdom of the ancients says that true vision does not come from the eyes. But when you are a parent, watching your children lose something so precious, that truth is a bitter comfort too hard to swallow. I am Chaitan Storm, and I have dedicated my life to listening to and sharing the impactful stories of Indigenous peoples. Stories of resilience, loss, and hope here in the U.S. and around the world. Now, with the new Trump administration initiative, a direct channel has been opened in Washington, allowing our Indigenous brothers and sisters to bring their voices, their struggles, and their truths to the government's attention. This is an unyielding battle to ensure we are heard, recognized, and respected. And in this video, you will see an account that left Paulina Luna in absolute shock. Two young Inuit brothers, celebrating their first hunt, had their lives transformed when the Arctic exacted its cruelest price, taking not their lives, but their vision. Get ready. What's coming is a brutal battle of a father trying to save what remains of his children's eyes as the relentless cold threatens to take from them much more than just the ability to see. And before we begin, just one request. Help spread the stories of our brothers even further. Subscribe and leave your like. The sun barely touched the horizon when we set out. That hunting day would be special. I would finally take my children, Malik and Nunik, on their first real expedition. Malik had just turned 12 winters, and Nunik, at 10, already showed the skill of a natural hunter. As a father, my chest swelled with pride, seeing their eyes shining with excitement as we prepared the sleds. "We're going to bring back the biggest seal the village has ever seen, Dad." Malik confidently adjusted his harpoon, his small hands steady. Nunik, always more cautious, checked the dog's harnesses for the third time. I watched the sky. The blue was clear, but there was something in the air, an unease. I have been Inuit for 42 winters, and the ice speaks to me like an old friend. That day, it was whispering warnings. Remember, respect the ice. It gives life and takes it just as easily. I told my children as I adjusted their eye protections made of walrus bone with thin horizontal slits, an ancient invention of our people to combat snow blindness. "Dad, I don't need this. I can see better without them," Malik complained, trying to remove the protection as soon as we moved away from the village. "Keep them on. Your eyes will thank you when the sun dances on the ice," I replied firmly, but I kept the true gravity to myself. I had seen strong men crying like babies, their eyes burned by the relentless reflection of the sun on the vast white. We moved forward for 2 hours. The Arctic silence enveloped us, interrupted only by the panting of the dogs and the sliding of the sleds. I taught them to read the signs, where the ice was safe, how to identify seal holes beneath the snow, by the thin layer of ice covering their breathing holes. "See how the snow accumulates differently over there. There might be a seal resting underneath," I pointed out, slowing my pace. Malik's face lit up with the possibility of making his first catch. But before we could get closer, I felt the change. It was subtle at first. A slight shift in the wind direction. A barely perceptible drop in temperature. "We have to turn back," I announced abruptly, to the visible disappointment in my children's eyes. "But we just got here. We haven't seen anything yet," Malik protested, his voice heavy with frustration. "The storm is coming. We don't have much time," I replied, already turning the sled. They didn't understand. How could they? The sky was still clear in front of us, but behind us, to the north, I could see. It wasn't an ordinary cloud, but a white monster swallowing the horizon. An Ilukuyak, a dry snowstorm, the most dangerous of all. I whipped the dogs with urgency. The sled cut through the ice with speed, but I knew it was a race we couldn't win. The storm would catch us. The question was, how much time we would have to prepare. "Dad, what is that?" Nunik asked, finally noticing the darkness growing behind us. "It's what we feared. Put on your eye protections, now," I ordered. But it was too late to return to the village. The storm engulfed us with a violence only the Arctic knows. Suddenly, the world disappeared in a white whirlwind. The wind cut like blades, and the temperature plummeted. "Stay close, don't let go of the sled," I shouted against the fury of the wind, but my words were ripped from my mouth. That's when I heard it. A scream that froze my blood more than any storm could malign. In agony. "My eyes, Dad, my eyes are burning." He had removed the protections. The fatal combination. The wind, laden with microscopic ice crystals, and the intense reflection of light, even under the storm. These crystals are like tiny blades, scraping the cornea like sandpaper. Desperate, I fought against the wind to reach him. Malik was on his knees, furiously rubbing his eyes with his gloved hands. The worst thing he could do. "Don't touch. You'll make it worse." I held his wrists tightly. His tears froze instantly on his cheeks. "Nunik, come here." But when Nunik approached, I saw the same terror on his face. His eyes, bright red, were tearing uncontrollably. "It's burning too, Dad. I can't see right." His voice, normally steady, trembled. Panic surged up my throat. My 2 children, blinded by snow blindness, and a storm surrounding us, miles from home. "We have to build a shelter. Now," I decided, sing calm into my voice. With automatic movements, born from a life on the ice, I began probing the snow with my stick. We needed compact snow, dense enough to cut blocks. The muffled cries of my children mixed with the howling wind, tearing at my heart with every second. "You're going to be okay," I repeated, more for myself than for them. "The igloo will protect us, and your eyes will heal." But I knew what snow blindness really meant. In mild cases, days of excruciating pain. In the worst, permanent blindness. I worked frantically, cutting blocks, stacking them in a spiral. My fingers, even protected by sealskin gloves, were losing sensitivity. Every few minutes, I stopped to check on Malik and Nunik, now huddled together under bearskins on the sled, their eyes covered with pieces of skin I had torn from my own parka. "It hurts so much, Dad," Malik sobbed, no longer the proud almost-man from hours ago, but a scared boy facing his first real encounter with the cruelty of the Arctic. The igloo took shape amid the white fury. It wasn't the prettiest I had ever built, but it would do. I dragged the boys inside, then went back to fetch the dogs and whatever I could from the gear. The entrance, sealed with a block of snow, finally isolated us from the storm. The sudden silence was almost as disturbing as the howling wind. Inside the igloo, the darkness was complete, except for the faint light that filtered through the snow walls. I lit the small seal oil lamp, our only source of heat and light. By the flickering light, I could finally examine my children's eyes. I gently pulled away the skins covering them. What I saw made my stomach turn. Both their corneas were opaque, as if a white film covered them. Their eyelids, swollen and red, could barely open. Tears mixed with a thicker liquid streamed from the corners. "I can't see anything, Dad," Nunik whispered, his voice small in the confined space. "Just spots of light." "I know, son, it's snow blindness. The ancients called it akiani, the fire in the eyes," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. "I will take care of you." From my bag, I took out a small container made of whalebone. Inside was a mixture of seal fat and herbs that my late wife prepared. For generations, Inuit women have kept this knowledge, passing it from mother to daughter. When Siaja left for the other world 2 winters ago, she made sure to teach me. "This is going to sting," I warned, applying the paste to Nunik's eyes first. His scream confirmed my words, but I held his arms to prevent him from rubbing. I repeated the process with Malik, who bit his lip until it bled to avoid screaming. The storm outside grew stronger. The igloo, though solid, occasionally trembled with the stronger gusts. I knew we were trapped there for at least a day, maybe more. "Dad, are we ever going to see again?" Malik's question cut through the silence like a knife. I swallowed hard. As a father, I wanted to protect them from the brutal truth. As an Inuit, I knew that lies do not survive on the ice. If we take good care now, your eyes might heal. But we need to be patient, I replied, choosing each word carefully. I know hunters who return from snow blindness. I didn't mention those who never regained their sight, those who became burdens to their families, unable to hunt or build. In our life, where every member must contribute to survival, permanent blindness was almost a death sentence. The hours dragged on. Every 2 hours, I reapplied the ointment to their eyes and offered melted snow water. The crying had ceased, replaced by a silence that weighed heavier than any lament. I hummed old hunting songs, told stories of the spirits of the aurora, all to distract them from the pain and fear. During the night, Malik developed a fever. His body trembled violently despite the bearskins covering us. In such small spaces, the warmth of bodies is usually enough, but the cold had penetrated deeply into us. "It's burning, Dad," he murmured, delirious. "The ice is burning my eyes." I pressed snow against his cracked lips, feeling despair grow. If the infection spread, it was Nunik who surprised me. Even without seeing, he fumbled in the dark until he found his brother, lying down beside him. "Do you remember the story Grandpa used to tell?" His voice echoed in the igloo. "About the great hunter who lost his eyes fighting the spirit bear, but gained inner sight." Malik didn't respond, but his trembling lessened slightly. "He said the hunter came to see with his heart and became the wisest in the tribe," Nunik continued. "Maybe that's what's happening to us, brother." I felt a lump in my throat. My youngest son, always the most sensitive, finding strength where I only saw despair. The storm lasted 2 days. 2 days of darkness, pain, and uncertainty. When the wind finally calmed, the sudden quiet woke us from a restless sleep. "I'll check outside," I announced, digging out the entrance of the igloo. The light that came in was blinding even for me. For my children, it was like daggers in their wounded eyes. "Close your eyes," I ordered, quickly covering the opening again. "We need to go out, but we'll keep your eyes protected." I cut long strips of skin, creating makeshift blindfolds. As I worked, I noticed something in Malik. The yellow crusts around his eyes had diminished. The infection seemed to be easing. "I can see a little light, Dad," Nunik said as I adjusted his blindfold. "Not shapes yet, but it's different from total darkness." A spark of hope ignited in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, we stepped into a transformed world. The storm had completely reshaped the landscape. New snow hills rose where plains once lay. The sun, low on the horizon, cast long blue shadows over the pristine white. "What's it like, Dad?" Malik asked, his face turned toward my voice. "What do you see?" How to describe the terrible beauty of the Arctic after a storm? The vastness that simultaneously crushes and elevates the spirit? "I see our way home," I replied simply, helping them onto the sled. The journey back was slow and arduous. Every hour, we stopped so I could check their eyes and apply more ointment. The dogs, as exhausted as we were, pulled with renewed determination, perhaps sensing they carried a more precious load than usual. On the second day of travel, something extraordinary happened. We were resting during a break when Nunik suddenly pointed. "Dad, is that a rock?" I followed his trembling finger. 50 meters away, a dark formation rose from the snow. He had partially removed his blindfold. "Yes, son, it's a rock," I confirmed, my heart racing. "Can you see it?" "Not clearly," he admitted. "It's more like a dark spot." But yesterday, there was nothing but white in my mind. That night, as we camped, I allowed both of them to be without their blindfolds for a few minutes at twilight when the light was softer. Their eyes, still red and swollen, blinked constantly, but were undeniably responding. "The stars, Dad," Malik murmured, looking up. "They look so different now." "Differently how?" I asked, helping him put his blindfold back on for the night. "More alive. Like they're pulsing." He hesitated, searching for words. "Like they want to tell me something." When we finally spotted our village on the 4th day after the storm, I was overcome by an emotion I hadn't expected. Fear. Fear of how they would be received. Fear of the future that awaited them if recovery wasn't complete. "They're coming!" I heard the shout before we could clearly see the figures running toward us. Our prolonged absence had been noticed. The elders surrounded us immediately. Upon seeing the blindfolds on my children's eyes, murmurs spread quickly. "Akiani," whispered the old Celia, the village healer. "Bring them to my tent." The following hours were a blur of activity. Celia applied her own mixtures to the boys' eyes, singing ancient chants as she worked. The council of elders summoned me to hear the full account of the storm. "You did what you could, Atka," said old Tarkik, our leader, placing a hand on my shoulder. "The ice tests us all eventually. And what if they never see completely again?" The question that haunted me finally slipped out. How will they hunt? How will they survive? A heavy silence hung in the council tent. Everyone there knew the cruel answer. "The eyes are not the only way to see," Tarkik finally replied. "Some of the greatest sages in our history lost their sight only to gain another kind of clarity." It was a gentle answer to a brutal reality. I knew, as did everyone there, that the life of a blind Inuit was one of dependence and extreme difficulty. In the following weeks, the entire village rallied around my children. The women brought traditional remedies. The hunters shared stories of recovering from similar injuries. The children guided Malik and Nunik around the camp, their eyes still partially blindfolded to protect them from the bright light. Slowly, day by day, their vision improved. First came the shadows, then shapes, eventually colors. But it never returned fully to what it had been before. The snow blindness had left permanent scars on their corneas. 3 moons after the storm, Celia finally declared they could remove the blindfolds completely. My children's eyes, once vibrant and clear, now had a permanent milky haze. Malik in his right eye, Nunik in both, more severely. "I can see enough to walk on my own," Malik declared, determined, and soon, to hunt again. "I still see everything blurred at the edges," Nunik admitted. "Like I'm looking through thin ice. But it's getting better every day." When spring arrived, bringing back the migratory birds and longer days, the village prepared for the first big hunt of the year. Traditionally, all the youths who had completed 12 winters would participate, including Malik. On the eve of the hunt, I found him practicing with his harpoon, missing more targets than hitting. "I don't need perfect vision to feel the seal moving under the ice," he insisted when I suggested he wait another year. "It's not dishonor to wait until you're truly ready," I replied, watching his frustration grow with each failed throw. "The dishonor would be to let fear win," his response came firmly. "That's what you taught me." That night, I consulted Tarkik. The old leader listened to my concerns in silence, his own eyes clouded with age. "Your son is right, Eka," he finally said. "Fear is a more dangerous predator than any polar bear. If we let it grow, it devours the spirit before it attacks the body." "But he's not ready," I protested. "His vision is still compromised." Tarkik smiled, the deep creases of his face becoming more pronounced. "Have you ever wondered why our traditional eye protections have only narrow slits? Why we don't allow our hunters to see the entire horizon at once?" I waited, knowing there was a lesson to come. Because the true vision of a hunter is not in the eyes, but in understanding. In the ability to focus on what truly matters and ignore the rest. He pointed to his own chest. "The sharpest vision comes from here, not here." He touched his eyes. The next morning, I watched Malik join the other young hunters. Nunik, still too young for the big hunt, stayed by my side. "He'll be fine, Dad," he said, his unwavering confidence. The storm taught us that what we see with our eyes is just a small part of the world. The wisdom in my youngest son's voice caught me off guard. At some point during those dark days in the igloo, he had grown in ways that couldn't be measured by height or strength. The hunters set off, their silhouettes shrinking against the white horizon. As I watched, I heard the words my own father had told me decades ago when I faced my first great hunt. "The ice tests us not to break us, but to reveal our true strength. Those who survive learn to respect its dangers without fearing them." The storm had taken something from my children, the invulnerability of youth, the perfect vision they had taken for granted. But it had given something in return, a deep understanding that many men take a lifetime to acquire. When the final darkness comes for me, as it will for all of us, it won't be my own hunting stories that I tell to the spirits. It will be the story of my children, blinded by the fury of the Arctic, who found a new way to see. The snow blindness that struck these young brothers is not just a story of pain, but a testament to the ancestral Inuit knowledge that transformed tragedy into lesson. A brutal reminder that the Arctic does not forgive those who disrespect it. To learn more stories of extreme survival that rarely reach us, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share so that others understand the challenges faced by peoples living on the edges of human existence. When we preserve Indigenous stories, we are not just recounting the past, we are protecting wisdom that can save our future.